And good morning, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to go through a kind of a real-world scenario of using some of the APIs. And the first one here is going to be just running through a list of IP addresses and querying the IP address from IPControl, which then will perform a DNS query to determine if the resource record's in the DNS, and then it returns a custom object that I'm then able to take and then output to a grid view, which is kind of a table. And in regards to that, I can just copy and paste into Excel, and it's a real quick way to get a report of kind of what's out there. Now, the first script that I'm going to use with this function is going to do taking it from a list of IP addresses that I've created. So, some things that you might want to take a look at is where that source is. And I think that where this might be applicable most will be for those who need to look up logs, find IP addresses within the logs, like your security admins. And I use this specifically for DNS query logs. And then to have the ability to pull out that IP and query who is that IP in IPControl. So if we're using that as the authoritative source, that's the idea. So I'm going to run just real quick through the script and what it's doing, give you an idea of the flavor of this, and then I'll just run the command, and it should be pretty quick to see how that works. So the first part is I'm just simply importing through the CSV a text file that I have that has the IP address, its MAC address, and its dynamic capability through the ARP. So I ran an ARP through PowerShell and then told it to capture the output that I could then use for this list. All right, and just so those who are following along can see that, I'm going to just paste that command that I was running. So this right here, just running an ARP, pulls out and is basically selecting the string, creating a space-delimited field list, which I can then parse through and grep. So by the way, this is a great way to get those MAC addresses, and for Windows users with domain controllers, domain controllers are a great source for IPs. Since your client's constantly communicating back to it, this list may stay more frequent than what your routers are, expiring those at 60 seconds. So anyway, I took this list and I made a comma delimited file out of it, just put commas here, and then I'm reading that into the list. So if I were to look at this from, say, a debugging perspective, when I load this in, I'm going to see that my list is just simply these IPs pulled from that mark. Now I'm going to for each one of these and pull out the IP and create an object, and in this new object I'm going to store the get IP address. So I'm going to call, and let's go ahead and do that so we get past the highlight. I'm going to call this IP using my Executive Inc. admin, and then the IP address, which I'm pulling out of the IP object. I'm then telling it to do my DNS lookup, and I'm putting the port. But I'm also telling it to go ahead and silently continue in the error action, so that if it errors for any reason, I can still check the value, and then I'm going to create a custom object if it doesn't exist. Now, if it does exist, I'm going to go then through and check and see if there's a DNS portion of this, which if you look at the very last line in this object display, it shows the resource record that it found through the resolve DNS module. And I'm going to go ahead and just create a string for this. I'm sure there's easier ways of doing that. And then I'm going to take this and select from the B object these fields in this order so that I can create the B object going back out to display. And then lastly, I'm going to remove a couple of properties from this that I don't want to do, because I'm not going to pass this through a pipeline. I just want to output this simply to a display. And that's all that's going to do. When it finds the record, it's going to parse this out. Now, if it doesn't find the record, because I want all of this in the grid view, I want to also create a record that has nothing found with it, showing me that, hey, there's no device, but here are the fields. And again, the reason I'm doing this is that the grid view, if all of the fields are consistent, it's a very nice display and easy to cut and paste, and that's the sole purpose for that. But then also I do want to go in and check and see if it's in DNS, and if it's in DNS, I want to record it and then pull it back so at least I can see it's there but not in IPControl. So again, I can flag certain features with that. So as I go through this and kind of step through it each way, and I get down to B, my new object output is going to be simply the information you see here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just, we'll just let this continue here. And it's going to just run through each of these. Now that was a great display, but I was doing this in the hundreds and thousands at a time when I was doing this through some very large query logs. And the performance was quite decent, 1,000 or so within a very quick period of time from the process. Now running the same command, if I were to do this on the command line, and this time I'm going, I don't want to do that. We're going to do lookup devices. Lookup IP devices. And then I just want to pipe this out to out grid view. Okay. And let's go ahead and just run that to continue. And this is going to create a nice little display for me. And as you see, it'll fill in those records that it's not found, that it's not in DNS, or that it is in the database, but it's not in DNS, and so on. And then this gives you a nice little tool then that using the output grid view here, that you can then add filters to it and the types of filters, to filter down to track your data. And as I mentioned, a Control A of this and Control C, you can then just copy this into your Excel. Now, one thing to note is it does not output the headers here. So if you wanted to do this in a file, you probably want to write out the CSV and have it output the file as well. But just from a data capacity, you simply copy and paste from the table, and it gives you enough data that you can look through. Use it as kind of a quasi-reporting tool, if you will. All right. So that was a real quick interview, or a real quick view of a real-life application you might want to run, and in security, and how you might use this. Now, I'm taking this a step further. If you're running this frequently and you want to check addresses, we could do things like look up the IP address, and if it doesn't exist, to create it. We could tell it to update the address if it does exist, but it's different. And we could do a number of other things that I might just go ahead and extend this example and let you see. So the next one I think I'll do is the same process here, but perhaps we're going to do an output of the subnet. So I'll query the subnet, get all the IP addresses, just simply so I can run through a DNS lookup of them and then report what's in DNS and what's not in DNS from a reporting. All right. So thanks for bearing with me this morning and joining me, and I'll be back, I guess, sometime maybe today or tomorrow with another quick video. Thank you. Take care.